I wanted to tell you a little bit about our organization. CODIR Canada was established in April 2007 as the Canadian chapter of the International Committee of Defense of the Iranian People's Rights. It was established in the UK more than 25 years ago. CODIR Canada is a democratic organization devoted to campaigning for peace, for human rights, and for democracy in Iran. We advocate for peaceful struggle to eliminate the risk of war and tensions in and around Iran generally and in the Middle East region specifically. CODIR Canada campaigns to abolish the kind of brutal violation of human rights that slideshow so clearly illustrates. We're also fighting for true democracy in Iran. Canadians of all backgrounds participate in the work of CODIR, trying to work with organizations such as trade unions, NGOs, members of parliament if they are willing to listen to us and to participate with us in the struggle for peace, for human rights, and for democracy. We're also promoting cooperation with other organizations, and sometimes we work with organizations that we don't always agree with, or they don't always agree with us. That's part of the democratic struggle for human rights. Our activities are directed by our own steering committee here in Canada, and of course we work closely with the founding organization in England. What I was going to do today was to talk to you a little bit about the international and the Canadian response in the last 25 days since the elections. What I think I'll do, rather than reading different statements, I think I'll at least give you a summary of who has been active and why it's so important for people to be active in different sections of civil society. For me personally, I work in the labor movement, and so it's important for me to begin there with my day-to-day work in the struggle for human rights, to see what trade unions have been doing. Clearly, some of the loudest voices internationally have been trade unionists. Organizations like the International Trade Union Confederation, Education International, the International Transport Workers Federation, and a whole range of other international unions of food and agricultural workers certainly have been supporting the annual June Day of Protest for democracy in Iran. But they have also been most vocal right now in sending letters to the Supreme Leader protesting the violence and the repression inside the country. I think we can safely say that when we total the membership in all of those global unions, we're talking about organizations that represent around 170 million workers calling for full democratic rights for all Iranians. They specifically demand, these organizations, that the clerical regime respect freedom of association and freedom of assembly. And there are a number of quotes from Brother Ryder, who's the president of the International Trade Union, Congress, the General Secretary, that I won't go into in detail. Here in Canada, the Canadian Labour Congress issued a statement very early following the election, and I'll quote from Ken Giorgetti, the president. The Canadian Labour Congress joins with groups from around the world to communicate our deep concern over the turn of events related to the recent Iranian elections and its aftermath. We urge your government to act swiftly in establishing a transparent and legitimate election process in your country, one where only truly elected candidates are chosen to represent your people. Brother Giorgetti goes on to say that in Geneva, the International Labour Organization, the ILO, placed Iran on the short list of countries that consistently violate internationally recognized standards for the protection of women, children, religious minorities, as well as workers and trade unions. And the presentation we saw earlier so clearly illustrated a history of repression against progressive points of view. The Canadian Labour Congress was among those who provided testimony to the special ILO review of Iran, and we join the international community in asking you to stop the repression of your citizens, especially those who speak up to defend human dignity and justice. He goes on, Brother Giorgetti, to talk about the trade unionists that have been detained, not only from celebrating May Day, but through their political struggles to organize independent and democratic organizations representing workers. There have also been a number of unions that many of us here are members of who have issued statements and letters of protest condemning the violence. They include the Canadian Teachers Federation, CUPE, NUPGE, the CAW, and all of those presidents have authored letters protesting the violence since the election. Amnesty International, while I don't always personally agree with Amnesty, has been very consistent in demanding and monitoring the post-election protest and demanding that more than 200 detainees be released. 200 detainees that were arrested simply from the July 9th wave of protests. Amnesty today has expressed new concern for the fate of hundreds of people who have been detained in Iran following the post-election crackdown, and the Amnesty posting of a couple of days ago talks about 197 people reported to have been arrested since July 9th demonstration marking the 10th anniversary of the violent suppression of student demonstrations in 1999. What Amnesty does so well, though, is it documents the individual names and the history and the circumstances of individuals, often leading to protecting those people's lives as well. I want to end with saying that as an activist in the labor movement, as an activist fighting for human rights, whether they be in Colombia or Honduras or South Africa or Iran, I think we face a number of confusing challenges. I think some of our challenges include, one, we're battling in Canada a perception that's been manufactured by the U.S. media in demonizing the state of Iran for many years. The George Bush trying to demonize Iran and their nuclear ambitions has been successful in stalling many Canadians from being outraged at human rights violations. I think it would be safe to say, too, that most Canadians are observers when it comes to human rights violations. They're not opposed, and they're not necessarily activists taking the lead in the street. Unfortunately, too many of them appear to be observers like at a soccer match, watching the most committed of the two sides fight it out while they stand aside. Our challenge is to try and move those Canadians into debate and, more importantly, into action. I think also there have been misconceptions that you spoke about earlier around that demanding democracy in Iran and supporting the protests since the election somehow means this is about Mousavi. This is about one Islamicist leader over another winning the election. Or that somehow if we oppose the violence and the crackdown that we're somehow falling into imperialism's hands, that we're agreeing with the secret ambitions of the CIA. We in CODIR see these protests as a cross-class demonstration of boiling fury for many, many decades, and that's what they are symptomatic of. We as activists see this current struggle as part of a long-standing process of resistance, and we stand as Canadian activists and as Iranian Canadian activists. We stand in solidarity with our sisters and brothers fighting for a free, progressive, and democratic Iran. For our part, we will continue to work in solidarity as allies with those resisting violence and tyranny in Iran. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate.